Folks, today I'm going to be previewing Nothing Personal. This is actually a different one for me because this is the game I designed with Stephen Avery. And what Nothing Personal is it's a mafia game where you control mafia family and you are trying to control different gangsters in the crime hierarchy. Each of these gangsters gives out money and respect at the end of 5 rounds of play. Whoever has the most respect is the winner. Now this is a negotiation, wheeling and dealing type game, and what I'm about to show you is how the game plays, or at least a brief example of how it plays, but realize that everything I'll be showing you is prototype. I'll show you some examples of the artwork of the final game, which in my opinion is phenomenal, and the quality of the components is really going to be fantastic, but I wanted to show you with what I have right now so you understand basically how the game works. Alright, first let's talk about the board here. Now, on this board you can see a hierarchy of gangsters. It starts from the first guy, second guy, third guy, the enforcer, racketeer, bean counter, the underboss, and the counselor, and then the capo. Actually, his official name would be the capo de capo, or the boss of bosses, or, as you might know him, the Godfather. Now that's the board that I'm showing for playtesting purposes. Here you can see a copy of the actual board of the game, or something that's very close to what it's going to look like, and I'm just really happy with this artwork. It's really neat in how the cards are going to line up and look on the board. But let's take a look at these gangster cards. Over the course of the game, you will be using different gangsters that will be on the board, and it's a kind of a random setup every time. The same guy will start out as the capo at the beginning of the game, but other than that, there's a random assortment of gangsters that will show up. Each of these gangsters is one of 4 types or suits. We have the hitmen, we have our thugs, we have gamblers, and we have our con men. Now this is kind of again, this is the prototype. Let me show you an example of what some of the real cards are going to look like. These are a couple of the people that we're going to have in the game, and you can see that, I mean, the artwork is just, like I said, phenomenal, and I'm really pleased with how this is coming together. And we will be adding a lot more pictures. In fact, you have a chance in the Kickstarter to have your picture in the game. Back to the gangsters themselves, some gangsters will be dual types. Like you can see, this guy is a hitman and a con man. This guy's a con man and a gambler. This guy is a gambler and a thug. And the capo is all 4 types at the beginning of the game. The game takes place in 5 rounds, and each of these rounds we follow the different phases, which is marked over here on the calendar track. And each of these phases is played exactly the same, although the board's going to be quite different for each of them. What players are going to be doing is they're going to be placing influence markers on the different gangsters. Now, the influence markers that I'm showing in this game are some little wooden cars, but let me show you some artwork, some conceptual artwork of what the influence markers are going to actually look like. They're going to stand for the different families that are in the game, so when you put it on these different gangsters on the board, that gangster is going to be somewhat, you know, he's going to do things as your family tells him what to do. Each player will have a hand of influence cards at the beginning of the game, and you can play as many of these influence cards as you would like each turn, but you will only draw some between turns, so you can use a whole bunch on one turn to control the board, or you might save some for future turns. That's up to you. Now, cards can be used in a couple ways. This one here lets me put 2 influence on any one gambler. This one lets me put 3 influence on any one conman. This lets me put 2 on any one thug. This one lets me put 2 on any one hitman. You can also take a card and discard that card and put 1 influence on anybody on the board. So if you don't have the icons you want, you always have that opportunity. There are some that are wild like this, where I can put 2 influence on anybody I want, or some that allow me to put 2 influence on here, like a con man, and 2 on a gambler. Now, some cards allow you to put it straight on a position. Doesn't matter what guy's in that position. Here I can put 3 influence on the bean counter. Other cards, instead of putting the influence down, I can use the special ability. You can see this one here says, or steal 3 respect from another player. So instead of putting out 2 influence on a gambler, I play this card and take 3 respect from another person. This one I can discard to take $12 from the bank. Other cards will say and. This one says, and you must allow one other player to place an influence on 1 position. So I can put 3 on the underboss, but I must allow another player to put 1 influence anywhere I want, or anywhere they want. Now, how do I determine where they put their influence? Well, folks, that's where, to me, the real fun of this game comes from. Because we have money in the game. It's not going to be poker chips like this. They're going to be actually little money cardboard chips. And you can use this money to do different actions in the game, but you can also say, hey, I would like you to give me that extra influence that that card is making you give somebody. So please give it to me. And then you give them the money. Or you can say, please give it to me, or you will regret it. Or, please give it to me. You can make any kind of wheeling and dealing, and you can trade cards, you can trade money. There's all sorts of negotiations, and none of them are binding. So you can say you'll do something for somebody and then lie. So what's going to happen is players are going to go around the table playing these cards. But there's more. Players all get to go around a table and play one card. And that's no problem. They play the card and do one of the actions which I just told you. However, after everyone has gotten one card, you can play more cards. Not a problem. But once you've played your second card, you are allowed to also pay the bank a certain amount of money. And when you do that, everybody else who plays a card must also pay that certain amount of money, or they can't. Now, they can raise it. When they play a card, they can pay $7 instead of $5, and that means everybody after that has to pay $7. So while respect is how you win this game, if you have a lot of money, you can force other people to play fewer cards. After everyone is done placing their influence and playing influence cards, then players are going to start reaping the benefits of controlling their gangsters. That's determined by starting at number 9 and going to 1 and seeing who controls each gangster. Whoever has the most in a gangster controls it. So the capo here is controlled by the black player. The yellow one is controlled by the underboss. This one, counselor, here is a tie. At that point, the person who controls the capo, who has the capo ring that they will be using, which if you notice when I turn it over, says breaks ties. And so that person can break the ties. How do they break ties? Well, you can offer them money, you can make threats, make deals, same way. But they have to pick somebody to break the tie. Once you've done that, you will take a look and see how much respect and money that person gets. So you can see here that Barney here gets 3 respect plus 4 for the position. So 7 respect, 7 points, and $7. While the underboss gets 4 and 4, and the counselor gets 4, 2 times 2, and 3. And as you go down, they're likely going to get less and less. The second guy is going to lose a respect, but he'll get $3. And then the third guy gets 3 respect and $4. So after everyone is done doing that, then each gangster, starting from the third guy and going all the way back to the capo, gets 1 action. Now when I take an action with a gangster, I can either use the position action. Each position has an action that a player can take with it. Or if the card has an action, I can take the action of that card instead. Again, only the controlling player can do this. Or I can try to make a move, which would mean advancing. Making a move is pretty simple. You look at your current respect, you roll a die, add that number, and if it's higher than the position you're going for, you will steal their position and you'll steal respect from the gangster, the person who controlled the gangster, who you just stole the position from. Each of the powers, though, is different. For example, the third guy can whack somebody, which means he rolls a die, and if he's successful, then that person is dead. They're gone. The person who controlled them loses influence, and the whacking person gets influence. The second guy can put a chip on somebody, which essentially cancels their action that they can take that turn. The first guy can remove an influence. The fourth guy can place an influence. The fifth guy can switch to influence. The bean counter steals $3. The counselor can put out 3 neutral influence, which can stop somebody from controlling something. The underboss gets an influence card. The capo has no special ability, but he breaks ties and gets a lot of influence points, so that's pretty good. But there's also special abilities in the card, like you can see here that Lou Vaselino, instead of negating somebody, he can whack a gangster by paying $5 rather than the 10 that it cost over here for the third guy. So there's different things that you can do, but that's not all. There are some influence cards that can be played outside the influence card phase. Basically, you can play them as normal, but if you play them any other time, you have to pay $5. But when you do, you can play it right when someone else is about to do something with a gangster. You can say, no, sorry, you're not doing that. I'm going to do it instead. And you quick pay $5 and put out the extra influence to give you control of the gangster. There's a lot of these cards in the deck, so you can have secret control of a gangster that no one knows about. Other cards, when you place them on the board, also allow you to place a blackmail token on that gangster. Here, Lou is controlled by the yellow player because he has 3 and the red player only has 1. And the yellow player says, oh, I'm going to whack a gangster for $5. He says, I'm going to whack the underboss for $5. And the red player says, no, you know what? That's not going to happen. See, the yellow player controls blue, but the red player controls yellow. The yellow player can't take any action unless the red player approves it. Now, you can convince him to approve it, or you can say, look, I won't whack that guy, I'll whack this other guy who's our mutual enemy. And now there's ways to get rid of blackmail, but you can see how they can be a real pain in your neck when you control someone and someone else is blackmailing that person. After everybody has finished taking their actions, then you will get more influence cards. And this is where, if you're not doing very well, you'll get more influence cards. The fewer gangsters you control, the more influence cards you'll get. But you're also allowed to buy them, and you can save them from turn to turn so that you can use a whole bunch on one turn. Then the feds show up. See, if you do too much, you're going to attract the suspicions of the government. And so here we can see the counselor has a whole pile of influence on him. In fact, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And in a 4 or 5 player game, that is going to send him to prison. So that's a good thing for neutral influence. And if someone else is controlling somebody, you say, man, I'm never going to catch up to green. Well, I'll throw a couple more influence on this guy, and that will send him to prison. And once that happens during this phase, all that influence is returned, and that guy goes to prison. And now I have a different spot here for prison than I have for the dead spot, because this isn't the Marvel Universe, and so when you're dead, you're dead. But when you go to prison, there are cards where you can break people out of prison and bring them back in. However, at the end of each round, there's likely to be a few spots open on the board. And at that point, each spot tells you the character, gangster, who picks the new person to move in that position, and you simply follow arrows. In fact, over here, there will be 3 associates who aren't in the game, although you can put influence on them, who will move into spots on the board as they open up. And then you'll bring in more people from the top of the deck. Once all that's done, we start the next year, and we keep going. After 5 years, whoever has the most respect is the winner. Now, I really like Nothing Personal, just a really fun game, and it's really fun because I call this a game that it's not a cooperative game. You are constantly making deals and working with someone else only to betray them somewhere else in the game. And you won't take it personally, name of the game, because it's going back and forth so often, and you have to know when to play your cards and which people to take, and there's all kinds of craziness that goes on, and every game is going to be different. So I hope that you found this interesting. Once the game comes out, I'll do very detailed rules videos, so it explains everything. I didn't touch on every single aspect, but I don't think the game is that hard to play. It's very thematic, and you'll find yourself standing up and yelling at other people or falling into fake bad mobster accents as the game goes by. Or at least I hope so. So if you think this is interesting at all, in just a moment I'm going to show you a link to the Kickstarter, and I hope that you would be interested in kickstarting this, maybe even to the point where you can get your own mug in the game, gangsterized of course, or your name, or even control one of the families. There's all different options, and I'm so excited about this game. The quality of the components, I've been going over those with the Game Salute guys. They have done an absolute fantastic job, from the artwork to the production to the numbers. This is not something, folks, this is a Kickstarter that I guarantee you are going to get. It is, a lot of the work is already done, production is already being started. Just it's exciting. So back it if you think it's an exciting game, and I hope someday that you and I will run across each other and I can play a copy of it with you.